Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the General Purposes Committee at Gloucester City Council. The first item on the agenda is apologies.
I think Vicky's on her way.
Then I've got declarations of interest. Are we okay with that? Nothing to declare? Minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of July. Are you happy to accept them? Except page 5, it's special responsibility allows instead of special. That's a typing error. But are you okay with those? Yeah. All right. Next item is public questions. We don't have any members of the public here to ask questions, so we'll move on.
Excuse me, Chair, just in relation to that question, well, that point of no public being here, it probably doesn't help the doors locked and no public can come in. I tried it. So yet again, the public meeting is not so public because the public can't enter the public meeting. I've got a video. Would you like to show you?
Mine to get in.
Video here.
So the building does lock at a certain time. The custodian goes down to open the door to make sure that the public can gain access.
3 minutes to 6 and the 6 o'clock public meeting, no public can enter. So if we can double check that, I did raise at the last 2 meetings that the same thing's happened. It's not just a one-off, it's happening regularly. So public meetings aren't being attended by the public because the public can't get into the building. So that really does need looking at. Democracy is being withheld and freedom of speech. Thank you.
We'll resolve that for future meetings, yeah.
Would you like me to go and check it? I'll go and check it.
Can we get on with the
Yeah,
business? No, we'll send somebody down. Item 5 is petitions and deputations. We don't have any of those. We haven't been notified of any of those, so I'll move on to the next business. On item 6, which is proposed constitutional changes. They're in the name of the managing director, but I think Tanya might be introducing them. We'll go through them in section by section, in other words, the proposal by proposal. Tanya.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, as the report says, this report is as a result of previous discussions at this committee and bringing forward some areas that the committee wanted officers to look at and presenting some options on those things. So taking the first section, which is around duration of meetings, members will be aware that we've had some very long council meetings or potentially long council meetings. We do have the guillotine in place, which allows members to consider whether they would like to close the meeting at 3 hours. The issue thereafter that is if members vote to continue the meeting is there is no further opportunity to then close the meeting at a later point. So what this proposal is saying is that if members vote to continue the meeting at the 3 hour mark, that there would be a maximum of 1 hour continuation so that there is a definite end to the meeting, which is important for those with any caring responsibilities so that they know that at a late hour, they know there will be a definite end point to that meeting. So that's the first proposal, Chair.
Can I just ask a question on that? That we do have adjournments from time to time. Are they part of the timing or not?
We usually add on for adjournments.
I think we need to make that clear if we agree to this in the constitution that if there's an adjournment, it's not the clock stops when we have an adjournment because we might have quite a bit of time on adjournment, but it's usually only about 10 to 20 minutes. But I think that's important. Otherwise, it takes away time from the debate. Anyway, I've got Andy Lewis's hand up first.
Thank you. I was just going to say it's actually sensible because I think after 4 hours you sort of almost getting towards brain dead then. And it also might help councillors to be a bit more focused on what's going on or whatever. Yeah, and I like the idea of adding on, be like the sort of rugby clock, you know, if you have an injury, you stop the clock and then carry on. And I think that's a good suggestion.
Daphne.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is definitely a good suggestion, and I think we've spoke amongst our group, particularly when we had a bit of a build-up of motions, that we really wanted to sort of power through and make sure that we didn't keep having to knock them over to the next one, so we wouldn't get into a situation. But we definitely noticed focus, and I've done a little bit of research on this, and you know, a lot of the statistics on this are that decision making is significantly impaired, the tireder, and obviously when people get hungry, etc., is really impaired, which made me consider the possibility of when we're dealing with questions, that's not decision making, but I don't know how, if it would be possible to put questions at the end of motions where we're making a decision on something, more at the beginning of the meeting, but I just don't know how that'll work with the guillotine and extra time. So that's just something I thought about when I was doing some research.
It's up to members, if you wanted to make a recommendation on ordering the agenda of council meetings differently, that is in your gift to do.
They do that.
Sorry, I've got Tree next.
I think it's a really good idea. Yeah, we've got people within our group who have caring responsibilities. We know this can be an issue. We know that there are also other people who have health issues in the council. So again, that is really important. But I do think as well that Steph's idea about having motions at the beginning, questions at the end, actually is probably a very good idea, because at the moment, granted, people want to ask questions and that's absolutely great. But additionally, if we're not getting through the motions and things like that, we could be missing some really, really important decisions that need to be made.
Declan. No. Oh.
It's okay, you crack on first, Declan.
Actually, thank you.
No problem.
Would I be right in thinking, did we, I've sort of thinking back into the midst of time, is that the order we used to do it? Wasn't imagining it then.
Yes, that's correct. I can't remember when, but it was, questions did used to be at the end of the agenda. It was changed a number of years ago.
Can we park the issue on questions until we get to questions, because we've got verbal questions as well. But I'm assuming I've got agreement from everybody that we agree to the duration of meetings, that there's a 4-hour limit, there's a vote on whether it's extended from 3 hours, and that the any adjournments are not counted as part of the time. Yeah.
Can this report still be amended slightly or not?
The report can be slightly amended. We can amend it at full council as well, so it will go to full council.
It's just because in our group meeting, there were a couple of members that felt that their opinion was that we are here for the people, we should give the people our time, etc. So I don't know whether there could just be some more in-depth information on, that this is not the best decision-making time to use like that, just so people don't think that we're just lazy, we don't want to stay late and etc. But there are some real reasons and actual factual reasons that we are deciding this, or should we just leave that to the minutes in council?
I think we can leave it to the minutes in council. I mean, if we're disciplined, we should be able to get through the business in 4 hours anyway. But that's always a difficulty, isn't it? Whether we're going to be disciplined or not. But that's a proposal, that we have a 3 hour meeting. There's a guillotine. It's extended for a maximum of 1 hour, and that if there are any adjournments during that periods, then they're not counted as part of the clock. So I'm going to take that as, are we happy with that proposal? Yeah. Yep, we've got agreement on that, Tanya. There you go. So we go to questions by members now.
Thank you. So this proposal follows on from calls from members from all sides, all parties, to return to spontaneous oral questions at full council meetings. The proposal here is to reinstate the previous 30-minute time slot for oral questions, to retain what we have in terms of group leaders having their opportunities first and then coming to other councillors after that. The intention would be that the mayor ensures that each member who wants to ask a question gets the opportunity to ask a question before we come round to then offering the opportunity for somebody to ask another question, so that everybody is getting that opportunity. So it will take some careful working through during the meeting, but that would be the intention, aside from the group leader requirements at the beginning. We're proposing the same in relation to questions to chairs of meetings, that those are spontaneous oral questions, retaining the existing 15-minute time slot. What we are not proposing is any changes to the arrangements for cabinet meetings. So currently in the report, it states that we would retain notice requirements for questions from members at cabinet meetings.
Alistair, I think you had your hand up first.
Thank you, Chair. So if I may ask Democracy Officer a question, or do I ask it through you? Okay, sorry, Tanya. I didn't, Tanya, right? At the moment, as my understanding, we've got 45 minutes of questions and 15 minutes of committee chairs' questions. Is that correct? So that's total, what, 60 minutes? And then the new proposals, 30 minutes of questions and then 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Okay. Given that there's not many sort of committee chair questions, would it be worth bundling the two together and starting 45 minutes with the questions, we're just saving the 15 off committee, purely for the fact not many people ask committee questions. And then with regards to questions, because we've allocated 45 minutes, instead of councillors only having one question each, we still have up to 45 minutes worth of questions, and it just goes whoever submits their questions first. The only reason I say that is because sometimes you can go 2 or 3 months, I think, without council meetings. And for somebody to have one question, say, for example, somebody in Podsmead, the council of Podsmead might only have one question. In that 3 months, there might have been a variety of issues that residents raised to them. And I just don't think it's good for the public if they can only ask one question on their behalf, if somebody doesn't want to come in and ask a public question. And if it goes around this cycle, then people get that opportunity. What I'm saying is when I first came to this council, there's only about 3 or 4 questions asked. And then the evolving of the council, there's a lot more people who've got the courage to speak, a lot more people are speaking, a lot of people are asking questions, which is really, really good. It's what democracy is about. And then to cut it down to just to one question per councillor on behalf of their constituents, I don't think that's really, really good, especially when you've got testing things coming into council. If that kind of makes sense, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. John, do you want to?
Well, just slightly related to your point, Councillor Chambers. I mean, obviously, you can ask a question at any time between meetings. You don't have to wait for council meetings to ask a question on behalf of your constituents. That was the first point I was going to make. The second point was the intention of this report was not to limit councillors to one question. It's just to reorder the questions so that they all ask one question each, and then if there's still time left in the time, they can ask a second one or so, or even more.
That's fine then. So the only thing then is if we could accommodate the committee's questions within that time frame, then you can maybe ask them first, because people never ask committee questions, and you've still got the 45 minutes.
I think the importance of questions is that first of all they are questions to the cabinet, and then if there are any questions to the committee chairs, then that they should be taken at the end, because it's about challenging the administration on their policies, and I think that's really most important. Andy, you had your hand up.
I don't think 30 minutes is long enough. I've said that before. I think 45 minutes of questions, because you basically got 6 questions to start with, and if they're relatively complicated or a bit of a bun fight goes on, well, that's half your 30 minutes gone to start with, and you got all the rest of the council might want to ask a question. We're not going to get through them if we're not having slightly more time. So I think the 45 minutes, and and I agree with Alistair to a certain extent about the committee chairs. We very rarely ask them anything unless they've got a paper up from this or maybe a planning one, but they're quite rare. So I think they can be rolled into a little bit, but we need to be slightly more focused. No massive preambles and this, that, and the other. We can't limit how long people take to ask a question because people take it different ways. But the questions need to be succinct and straight to the point. You'll get your arguments in the supplementary. So I think it needs to be 45 minutes, definitely, to actually ask. So, I mean, not to be very, we've got more cabinet members to ask now, things like that. So I think 45 minutes is minimum.
I think the issue is if you go for the 45 minutes, it's best to have the 15 minutes for questions of the chairs, because if the time period is not used, it's not used. But if there was a need to ask some questions of a chair of a committee, it's probably best to just keep that reserved. But the priority, obviously, for most members, is to challenge the cabinet and the administration on what they're doing on that one. Can I just ask other members, are they content first of all on it going to verbal questions, and are you also content, or will you be happy to change it to 45 minutes period?
Can I?
I'd like 45 minutes for questions to cabinet and then 15 minutes reserved separately. Either we give chairs an opportunity to speak and say, I've got a question, so sometimes reserved definitely for that period if they do want it. My other question is, I know, like Andy said, it's very difficult to time a question and an answer, but, you know, we just need to make sure somehow, and I don't know what facility could be in place, or at least the timer goes on. So it's very obvious if somebody's spending 5 minutes asking a question or something like that.
That's a speech.
At least it's, you know, visually there that we know that's happening. So that's the one point I wanted to make. And the other thing that I'd like to make is I would like the opportunity for some people to still be asking written questions if they wanted to. So if they prefer to write a written question into it, gives you time to respond to it, but you're still not going to have the big influx on the officers. But there's an option there if somebody does want to do that. So that would be a question. And then my other question on questions would be, can we not introduce this for public as well? So they can just come in and ask a verbal question.
Yeah, I mean, the issue about the written questions is why we were suggesting retaining it for the cabinet meetings, which meet on a more regular basis, is often people are wanting to ask a question because they want it put on the public record, and it gives an opportunity for the cabinet to respond to those questions at the cabinet. And bearing in mind, we're trying to restrict the period of council. What we don't want to do is take up a lot of time on business which is not going to change decisions, and find out that we run out of time for votes that we need to take. And that again, is something I've got Declan, and then I've got Andy.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Chair. Happy enough for the 45 minutes, but my only concern is that that's an extra 15 minutes. That's 15 minutes less for debating motions.
If we swap them around.
If we swap them around. And it could well be that, well, it could, if the motions take too long, we could end up with only 20 minutes or so for questions. So it's going to be a difficult thing to operate in practice. Yeah, so it needs to be managed. That would be my one concern. It's whether or not you put more importance in the motions or the questions. So 15 minutes extra on one is potentially 15 minutes less on the other. So I would be more in favour of just keeping the 30 minutes for now, see how it works, and leave that option to extend it with 45 if we've got less motions.
Andy?
With the questions, the written questions, you know, there are certain councillors who don't like speaking in public, and that's just the way that, I think they should be able to still write in questions, but they get no supplementary in the full council. They just get the answer and that's it. That would be, but then they can do that at any time, to be perfectly honest. They can write in questions, and if they don't get the right answers, then they can complain or do something. I think with the 30 and 45 minutes, I think it should be 45. And then we've got to get more disciplined about how we ask questions, our wasting of time, or repeating, or this, like that. I think actually the notices of motion are actually slightly more relevant and more important to everybody. So I think they should be given precedence over it, because then everybody can join in on that motion. Whereas a question, you know, you're just doing it, it's an individual, aren't you? I would like the notice of motion to come first, because then we can have our bun fights and whatever. We can do that anyway, and that's more relevant to the public. The questions tend to be slightly specific. I think a lot of time, like Declan says, it's going to be a suck it and see, and then we can come back and we can have a look at it again whenever we need to. But I would just prefer to have the 45 minutes at the moment, and then 15 minutes for the supposedly questions to the committee chairs.
If you look at it, you've got probably 45 minutes for questions, and then you've got a bit of the business at the beginning, and then you've got possibly, well, it's only when there's an issue that really needs to be debated at council committees. Often they might be called over, and that gives some space. But if you're doing this, there's a proposal about how many motions, or the time limit for motions as well. It's just about making sure you get it balanced, and you don't run out. You don't have 15 motions in, and then you just run out of time, and people have been waiting to ask a question, aren't able to ask a question. I've got Tree next.
Okay, thank you. In regard to the questions to cabinet members and questions to chairs of committee, and whether we retain the space for questions to chair of committee, is there any mileage in actually moving it so that the questions to chairs of committee come before questions to cabinet members? Because if we had X amount of time allocated to chairs of committee and then an X amount for cabinet members, if nobody has got questions for chair of committee, then we could just extend the amount of time for questions to cabinet members.
I mean, I'm concerned that the questions to cabinet members, the priority, and I wouldn't want to do anything that makes people feel that they haven't had the opportunity to ask me or any other member of the cabinet some question at council, because we run out of, or other businesses is got in the way. So I mean, I'm okay with the 45 minutes, and I'm okay with the verbal questions rather than the written questions, and I'm okay with the group leaders then having the first stab at the questions, and then we run through. I mean, I think that's how it worked before, wasn't it? And the issue is whether you do the written version or the verbal version. I think we've tried it before and it worked well. And I think if I was a group leader and wanted to ask a question that I've been working on for ages, and then find out that we filled out the agenda with other stuff and we've not got to the end of it. We've had this issue at the county council where questions come in late in the day, whereas at one time they were straight after the public questions. And I wouldn't want to necessarily change the agenda. I think it's the important part. It's often part of the theatre of the council, isn't it? I mean, the big problem with two questions for the group leader, sometimes I had to think, what questions am I going to ask? Because I knew it was my job to have two questions and two supplementaries. Alistair.
How many councillors are there? Is it 39?
Yeah, take the mayor to share.
39.
Yeah, take the mayor to share.
Okay.
37.
So based on 39 councillors at 30 minutes, that's 30 times 60, 1800. 1800 divided by 39 is 46 seconds per councillor, 4 questions. And there's going to be like 5-6 seconds of that would be gone by the mayor saying the name, Councillor Chambers, to ask the question. So you're then looking at, by the time they've asked the question, they've had the answer, they've asked the question, it's just, you're looking at seconds to ask your question, have the answer, so it's not possible in 30 minutes whatsoever. So I think 45 minutes is needed.
Good.
But
Let's decide one issue.
just really quickly, though.
Yeah, let's just decide one issue. Shall we accept 45 minutes
Yes,
for
please.
questions to cabinet members?
Yes.
And we leave 15 minutes for questions from members to chairs of committees. Yeah? So we've got that settled. And we agree that we move away from the written questions and that they will be verbal questions without notice. Though it would be sensible for members of the council, if they have got a detailed question or a technical question, if they let the cabinet member know beforehand. If they don't want, I'll give you that back. I'll give you an answer in writing. Often it's a good thing to just let the cabinet member know that you're going to ask a question about that subject matter as well. That's useful, but that's up to the questioner.
How would you like that done? Would you like that to go through Dem Services to the cabinet member, or would you like us to go to the cabinet member?
That's up to the member. I mean, basically, this is verbal questions without notice.
Right.
But if you know you're going to ask a question and you want an answer, you can. It's often, particularly if it's something that's not been considered before or something like that. It's polite and it might be helpful to the questioner. That's all. But that's your decision.
Okay.
So we've got those sorted. I would recommend that we stick to the current order of business at the moment. Otherwise, we might end up with people preparing questions, and a lot of members will prepare questions, rather wanted to speak in a debate because they want to ask a question about their ward. And the last thing you want is running out of time and the guillotine coming in. You want people, if you're going to have 45 minutes, you want to make sure you get the 45 minutes. All right. Fine. We're getting there. Next, so that's that one. Then there's motions on notice. Tanya.
Thank you. So following on from the issues that some of you have mentioned around the amount of time that is spent discussing motions and running out of time for some motions recently, there are 2 options that you may wish to consider. So one is what I understand happens at the county council, which is there is a time limit on the amount of time that is spent discussing notices of motion. The proposal or the suggestion here, a period not exceeding 2 hours. With anything not debated, void, and then could be resubmitted for a future meeting. The other option on the table is to reinstate a rule that we used to have in the Constitution but didn't really use, which stated that group leaders would get together to select which motions would be debated at that meeting. You could then think about whether any motions not selected for debate would either be void and could be resubmitted, or whether they could be voted on without debate. So that's the first part of that. The second part is if you decide to go down either of those routes, there are options around how the order of debate of motions could be selected, which could be, again, by group leaders choosing, or the managing director in consultation with the mayor, which is what we have currently with the written questions. We determine the order to make sure that it is fair and it rotates. And that would be the likely outcome of that we would rotate it around the groups with a different group starting each time potentially. Thank you.
I know at the county council, they often have a chair's briefing on the Friday where they look at the motions and the group leaders sort of just try and manage it. But when there's too many motions, you always run out of time. But sometimes where it's an issue that's agreeable between the groups, an agreement is made that only one person from each group or something like that speaks on the motion in order to make sure the business proceeds. But we've got 2.2 there. I mean, the other issue is this 2 hour limit, but we're talking about a maximum limit of 4 hours for the council all told. So I've got Alistair's hand up first.
I think the time limit on the motions is probably the best thing. I think to agree when's to take away and not put in, I don't think that's right. There could be a great one from the Labour group or Conservatives, and then they might agree that that one's void. I don't think that should be done. I think it should just be a time on it. And if you get through quickly, then fantastic, get through them all. And if you don't, then it's just obviously an important topic that people want to talk on. So it shouldn't be persecuted that things are removed if ultimately the leader doesn't want them in there because it's a contesting point for the council they run. You need to have all motions in there for each group to put in. And if they run out of time like they do in the county council, then so be it. It is what it is. But if you get through them all, which we do sometimes in the county council, then fantastic. But to remove motions, make them void without them even going to council is just not democratic and it's not freedom of speech. So I'm just with the time frame only. Well, thank you.
I've got Declan, then I've got Tree, then I've got Andy.
I would actually be inclined to agree with that because the second option there, it seemed to me like central control, making arbitrary decisions. And certainly if I was a person who's proposed a motion and then didn't get the chance to debate it simply because others decided it wasn't worthy, I don't think I would be very pleased with that either. So given that we know how it works in the county council, it's a formula that some people have experience with, so that they know how it works and are familiar with. I would be inclined to take that route. So I agree with Alistair in this case. There you go.
Thank you, Declan.
Tree.
I think your option one, the same as the county council, saves confusion. There is no risk of anybody feeling that their motion is deemed as not coming along because of political reasons or something like that. I think that one is probably the fairest, to be honest. And then for the order that they go in, probably that the managing director in consultation with the mayor organise the order. I think that's going to be fairest.
I'm reluctant to use the power of the largest group to sort of try and say this motion can be heard in that motion, because we've seen that happen in other local authorities where opposition groups are almost squeezed out because the largest groups refuses to debate the issues. And there's other, I think we need to have debates on it. But it would be useful if maybe when the motions are in, the managing director considers the motions that we've had in and tries to sort out the order in consultation with the group leaders, and the objective really making sure that each political group, from the opposition in particular, has one, because if we can get through 3 motions in 2 hours, has at least their first priority motion heard and debated, and that we go try and do that in an order. I mean, what we don't want is half a dozen in from one group, and then we just don't get to the other ones. And what we don't want to try and do is what the county does, which, because they come in that order, we chase the motions. So our group now at the county is putting them in almost as soon as the council meeting is finished in order to make sure that we've got one on the order paper. So I think if we ask the managing director, in consultation with the groups, to say, look, should we debate those ones, then we should be able to work through a system. But I'm getting the view that Andy's want to speak, so
I'm going to say this, I totally agree with you, Jeremy. I mean, I don't think it should be up to John, to be perfectly honest. Each group should have their favourite that they want to bring forward, and that's up to the group leaders and the groups themselves to decide which of them it is. Because I don't want to put the onus on John and say, well, no, we can't have that, we own this one. I think that's slightly wrong. It should be up to, it's our questions and our debate time, and it's putting an onus on John and the officers, and I don't think that's right. Each group should have their preference, and then if we get to another one,
yeah.
we'll have another one then and go round in that order. And when it comes to the second choice, maybe it'd be our turn in the first council, then it'd be the Labour group or whatever. So we take it in turns to have the second debate, and then we just go down the line until they're all gone. You know, but I think the timing, I think, is ideal. You know, we limit it to a certain amount of time, and that'll keep people focused. You know, if we hurry up, we can get another one in or whatever. You know, because a lot of the time we do spend people just regurgitating the same stuff every time. You know, so and so said, so I'll say that one. But I would just say one per group, and if we've got time, we start going down the pecking order, and that will be maybe draw lots to start with for the first one. No, for the first one, and if you know, is it Labour or is Liberals or whatever, just go down that
Go with
order.
alphabetical.
Just rotate it for the second question, and I think then everybody's happy because everybody's fair.
I think that's a good sensible. And then each group, when they're proposing motions, can focus on making a decision on what their priority motion is and the one that they really want to debate. And the one you really want to debate, frankly, is usually the one that you want the journalist in the corner to report back on as well, because or ones that got a critical action. So at the moment, we've got an agreement, a 2-hour limit on motions. Are we okay with that? Vicky?
Can I just ask a rookie question? Yeah. So if the motions are not debated, any motions not debated within the time allocated, is there no, do they just shuffle to the bottom? Can they not shuffle to the top for next time? Or do they lose any position in them?
I think they need to be resubmitted, and sometimes they might be out of time. But it might. We've got a 2-hour limit, and we know that we've got our first motion debate for each group. I mean, as far as the administration is concerned, I think the purpose of motions is generally, unless it's an exception, it would be for members of the opposition to move them. You know, I mean, if we need to move a proposal, we can do that with a report to council. If you run out of time, but if you've got a discipline of knowing that that's the one you want to debate, and there might be another one at some time, so it does discipline everybody to say, well, we can't put in 6 because we're not going to get them debated. But then that's what I think. If we work on a disciplined way, fair way, then we'll get the debates, and everybody will feel that they've had their say and they've had their opportunity to propose things. But are we the first question? I'm trying to do it in order of, we're all agreed a 4-hour limit, right? 2-hour limit, a 2-hour limit. So. Definitely.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I am in agreement. In an ideal world, we'd all get to speak, we'd all get to say how much we wanted, etc. But I think the proposal for how the order goes is good, because you get things that are very time specific. So residents might come, there's something going on in the city, there's something that really is important, it could have been floods, whatever, and they want to address those things. So I think that's really important. I really like it that it's not weighted, because it gives the smaller parties still an equal opportunity to put their motions forward. And I definitely like what Andy said with each group given it a one priority. So this is their number one priority, and this is the one they'd like debated. And that roughly gives about half an hour per group, doesn't it, to debate a motion? What are the time limits on people speaking on motions? I forgot that.
Is it 5 minutes?
It's for,
So it's 5 minutes for movers and seconders of motions and amendments and 3 minutes for everybody else.
Would it be possible, while we're bringing these in, to have not a full briefing, but, you know, at least a sheet of instructions for members and groups so we can easily explain and we know that actually this means that probably 3 people in our group can speak this one, or if you want to speak on the next one, so we can really understand the rules, so we can explain that and share that around a little bit.
I think if the managing director's advising on, and we've got a discussion about the order of the motions and which one it is, I think having that conversation beforehand, we're more likely to be disciplined and saying, look, we can then say to each other, well, should we just have 2 members from each group speaking on the matter, or do we just need one person? I think sometimes you need more because it's one issue where members want to talk about problems in their own ward. So it all depends on the issue. And there's others where we're all unanimous that we agree with the content of the motion, and we can just probably get it through with a proposer and seconder and somebody speaking from each group. And if it's not controversial, you don't need to speak for 3 minutes either. You can just often get that over in a couple of minutes, can't you?
People tend to get
Yeah, well, yeah. Do you want to propose what you were proposing?
Did you get it? You get it, yeah. The only thing I would suggest, sometimes we have noticed a motion that actually very similar from different groups. Now, to save time, would it be possible somewhere for the group leaders to get together and put the one together? I just think that'll save another complete notice of motion. And also, can the group leaders actually say which is their second preference one? So that they, you know, you've already got it and we know which one we're going on to. And it's, you know. All right, okay. So, yeah, you got what I meant about the other one.
I've got Declan and I've got Alice.
Yeah, just a question on the time limits, 5 minutes proposal second, or 3 minutes, everybody else. If a cabinet member is responding to the motion as their particular responsibility, would it be possible for them to have 5 minutes as well? Because sometimes 3 minutes isn't long enough.
I don't know. I mean, that's up to us, I think. Can I just agree that we've got this priority and one motion for each, the proposal that's been captured that Andy would do, and we'll draft the resolution so you've got that clear. So we've done that bit. So the other one was, I've forgotten now where we are. I'm chairing. No, Declan's proposal. What should cabinet members have 5 minutes to respond to a motion which is under their jurisdiction?
I think they should have exactly the same time.
Thank you.
Karen, go for it. Are you okay? Yeah.
So, yeah, going back to that, we're cutting the time down, we're keeping it short. It doesn't happen in county. We're following the same lines of what works. What Andy said about doing discussions of similar motions before that happens in county, I think the Liberals did one with Conservatives and just changed it slightly. So I think that agreements like that can be done if they're the same thing, like the sports centre shutting, everyone's throwing the similar motions, don't shut it, blah, blah, blah. You can just team up and just do one combined one. So I think that's a good idea. Maybe a period before the meeting starts where leaders can meet up, because there's amendments that go in that day. So say the meeting's at 6, leaders could meet at 5:30, for example, go through and just tidy up any amendments that have come in. But the amendments have been at 12 that day, so maybe leaders could meet up, review them, they'd have had time to speak to their group, and they might even be able to agree stuff before council. Yeah. Like you'd normally do in mediation with the solicitor in the Supreme Court.
Anya.
Yes, so if we receive motions from different groups that are similar, we would say to you that there's a motion that is similar, you might want to have a chat with so-and-so group leader. So that's not precluded now, but it's obviously absolutely up to yourselves whether you want to do that and get together and have a joint motion. We have had that in the past, certainly.
The other aspect of motions is on the rules of debate is about amendments. This is to committee reports or to council reports that come from the administration, or to motions. Is that the motions at the moment require amendments in writing before midday and then published at 3 o'clock. They're not required for the council administration reports, and we're suggesting that they are, so that we don't need to spend time at council having an adjournment and we know clearly what's been said, and we're all the officers are proposing that that's moved to the midday the day before, and that they're published at 5 o'clock. So we've got 24 hours to properly think through what the amendments might be to the order of business. So that's on the table. Is there anything else that needs to be said about that, Tanya?
Just that that's bringing it in line with the timeline for submitting amendments to notices of motion. So it's the same timescale for both.
I think that would actually improve the quality of the motions and the amendments as well if we did that, because sometimes people have got jobs during the day, they're rushing to get to the council meeting and they don't really have time to think it through, and you're struggling to do it at the meeting. If you had it the night before, you've got all of that evening to sort of go through, and I think that would actually improve the quality.
Definitely.
The only query I would have with that, with how I feel sometimes in council, is during debate, you know, the whole point of debate is because you're talking to people, you're thinking things through. Could there be any exception to that? As in debate, that's when you start to form your opinions as well. Well, you don't start to form them, but you might change your opinion. What happens then? Just vote it down instead.
Well, I know. I mean, the issue is you either vote it down. I think that if you've got the motion, and you've seen it on the order paper, and then you're preparing an amendment, and it's put in before on a Wednesday at 12 o'clock, and then there's a 5 o'clock comment. I mean, I think all you could do is having an exception to the rule, but otherwise what we end up doing is getting minor changes, which, you know, and people speak to these minor changes and their members not sure exactly what it is, and we end up with us voting against things because somebody's expressed their reasons in a different way than you thought. So the beauty about having it in writing is that you know precisely what you're voting on.
But that's the whole purpose and love of debate, isn't it? That you do just think.
Have your mind changed?
You have your mind changed, you talk as amongst your group still. You know, that's the whole purpose. Otherwise, why would you be debating? The debate would just be a show.
I suppose you could make the same argument about notices of motion, but you don't have exceptions for that.
But don't we? Because haven't we occasionally gone, okay, we'll have a little thing, we'll have a little change. We do that, don't we?
Not in the Constitution. I'm not aware that. I mean, I think writing something in the Constitution to the effect of, but you can always have an exceptions if the things don't feel right. It's very hard to write, and B, I'm not sure you'd want to put that in a constitution. I mean, the mayor does have a certain amount of latitude to manage the meeting as they see fit, and maybe the best thing to do is to leave that bit of vagueness unwritten and not in the constitution, to give the mayor that freedom to sort of manage the meeting as they see fit, rather than us try and craft something that say you have to do something by date X, But if you don't and you change your mind on the night, it's sort of okay. That, the mayor's word.
Well, that's probably a better option. The mayor says, yeah, everybody in agreement, fine, off we go. It's just common sense.
The main purpose of this amendment is to avoid the situation we had at the last meeting where one of the members had to go and sit down with Tanya and sit there drafting an amendment, which then had to be emailed out to all councillors whilst everyone else was going off having a cup of tea. Is no good for, you know, those in the chamber or outside, really. So we're just trying to avoid that scenario by getting as much preparation as possible into the amendments, as the chair said, so that people know what they're voting on.
Wow, I think we've changed the constitution, or we're going to propose to change the constitution.
Is there any
It
other
goes
changes?
to council now.
Is there any other changes that could get proposed to the constitution while we're here?
Alistair, as I said in full council, when if any member has got a suggestion about changing the constitution, you write to the chair of the General Purposes Committee and make a suggestion, and we can take it to the committee. Normally, the process is that the proposal would be considered by the managing director and the officers in order to see what implications were on the constitution and how the changes would be drafted, and then we discuss that here. And if we're in agreement, we would then send that through to full council for consideration and a vote.
Thank you. Can I give you my notice proposal verbally? I can still give it to you, can't I? To the chair of the General Purposes. So in a nutshell, what it is, Jeremy, is if executive decisions, when called in to overview and scrutiny, could still get ratified in the full council, rather than just be a straightforward cabinet decision. That's what I'd like to discuss in General Purposes going forward.
You're going to have to put that in writing.
Well, yeah. Well, I suggest you put that in writing.
Okay, I will do.
But remember, the legislation gives powers to the executive, and that's the purpose of it. Otherwise, you could have
No, I appreciate that.
you could have constant wrecking of decisions of the executive by just a couple of members.
I appreciate that. That does make sense. But it'd be more around the papers, for example, just for an example like that, just say something was definitely a housing policy paper and it was changed to be a disposal, say for, I don't know, and they made it financial for a disposal, and then the housing person doesn't turn up, just say hypothetically, and then it's passed off so it could go through executive rather than being called through to full council, when obviously it was in the mandate, the political mandate. It was also referenced in the paper as a policy change, and in the live debate it was referenced as a policy change. So things like that need to be looked at, otherwise obviously it calls for a possibility for judicial review, for appeal. Cheers.
Yeah, can we? If I know what you're saying, and it doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't necessarily mean that you're making sense or talking sensible, or you're not creating a system which would create decision chaos at the council, and where funding which has been agreed or not agreed would you've got to make decisions. You've got to move on, and you know. But
I get that.
But all you've got to do is write to the chair of the General Purposes Committee, not the leader of the council, because I can't change it in that role, and with suggestions about changes to the constitution, and then the officers will consider it and tell me first of all whether it's legal or whether it's within the rules, and what the process and what the implications are, and then it'll come back to this committee.
Thank you. I will put that in writing, because I just want to make sure things in the constitution are being upheld legally.
Yeah.
The
All right.
democratic right,
All right.
freedom of speech for the public. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
very helpful to some people at times. I also believe in firm policy making and getting on with the job and not faffing about. Anyway, can we now move on? I think we've done the constitutional changes. Next thing, Tanya, is polling districts because of the county council elections.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully this one will be much more straightforward. As members will be aware, there has been a boundary review of the county council divisions. We don't have any control over those boundaries, so this report is not about asking you if you like those boundaries. It's not about which polling districts are in which division. That is also part of that boundary review. So Appendix 2 tells you which polling districts will be in which county boundary divisions once the order is approved. We don't have control over that. So all that is before you today are 3 specific items that we are looking at where we do have some control. The first of those, if I get to the map, so what we're looking at here with 2 of these is we have some areas where there were polling districts that were part of a specific ward that were in a different county division from the rest of that ward. In 2 situations, that has been changed so that the polling district in question is now in the same county division as the rest of the city council ward. That means we have the opportunity to merge that polling district back in with one of the polling districts in that ward. We are only seeking to do that in 2 situations or 2 locations where the voters in those 2 polling districts already vote in the same location, i.e. there would be no impact on voters. All it does is it just reduces that particular location down from 2 polling stations in that location down to 1. And we're only doing that where the numbers mean that that wouldn't affect voters, it wouldn't make it difficult to vote in that location. It's simply that they were split off because of the county boundary, the original county boundaries. So what we're looking at specifically is we are proposing that we merge polling district B4, which was in the Abbey division, but will now be in the Barnwood and Hucklecote division, back in with B2 because they vote in the same polling station. And then the same in relation to polling district P2, which is now in the same county division as P1. So both Podsmead polling districts are in the same county division, which means we can merge them and have 1 polling station at the location. There's currently 2, same location, just going to have 1 polling station at that location. The final proposal, the first part we don't have any control over. So because of the new boundaries, it requires that polling district E1 needs to be split because part of it will remain in Long Levens and part of it will now be in Kingsholm and Wootton County Division. So we need to split polling district E1. Really, the only decision here is where would the polling station be? All we're saying is we're just going to have another polling station at the same location. So voters in E1 and what will become the new E4 will vote in the same place still. So again, no impact on voters. So none of these proposals will have any impact on voters in terms of where they vote. So no voter confusion issues. It's simply administrative changes so that we can run the elections efficiently. Thank you.
So are we content with those proposals? Definitely.
I'm content, but I will say something because Tanya did mention that we have no say on this, but there was a consultation quite a long time ago where we all had a say and we could all put our points across. So, and I think most parties did. So we did get a say in it. And yeah, I'm really happy that there's no voter confusion. I think that is great.
And what I like about the new county divisions, there's because I did suggest some ideas. Is there's less wards that are carved up. So there's only about 3 or 4 wards now, Kingsholm, Westgate and Elmbridge. And I think there's one other, but before there was a lot of wards which were carved up all over the place. And we've now managed to move them in, whole wards into like for Alistair's division, that will be the whole of Matson, Robson and White City plus Coney Hill. There's no bit of Abbeydale in it. It makes it much more simple. So that's beneficial for people. Alistair.
I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Tanya for the hard work she did in both the elections. I thought it was amazing. And I remember when I first became a councillor, I was a little bit not understanding the process, and I might have said some silly things. So I'd just like to apologise for that again, like I did at the time, and just thank you for all the hard work. Is when you've been a councillor and you start looking at it, you see what's involved. There's so much. You see all the letters coming in, all the paperwork. So I thought you and your team did an amazing job. And you're really, really good and really helpful. So thank you very much, Tanya.
And I'll echo those comments. Just before. Oh, we've agreed all those, haven't we? Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight something that came to light today, which is that the order that passes these new county boundary divisions into law, we've heard today that there was a small error in that order. The Government Legal Department have noted that. So what that means is that order is going to have to be relayed for another 40 days. So we literally found out today. So we're just doing some investigations in terms of what that means for us publishing the new electoral register on the 1st of December, whether we're able to publish with those boundaries in the background or whether we need to delay publication. It won't really have any impact in terms of voters or anything like that. It's just an administrative issue. I understand that. But you do have in the appendix, you know which polling stations, which polling districts will be in which division. So hopefully you can still work to that. It's just in terms of where they sit when we publish the register. So we'll just do a bit more investigation of that and work out what we need to do. Thank you.
It's like a error by civil servants. I can't imagine that working for for Parliament.
Just because we're always having a moan about things sometimes, I emailed Tanya about this issue yesterday, was it? I had an email back within like 5 minutes, I think.
And I emailed her about 7 o'clock at night and she emailed me back within about a minute. So thank you very much, Tanya, for withholding the officer member protocol within 5 days. You did it within 5 minutes. So thank you very much.
And Tanya's responded to me on Sunday as well. But that's a bit of, I think we've now finished the meeting. It's taken us just over an hour. Thanks for members turning up. It was a good debate. May we have more like this.